Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire. Joe Otto might be joining us later. I think he is out today, though. So we're going to get right into it. Not the happy Wednesday that we expected it to be. Listen, Donald Trump still technically, as long as these states haven't been called, certified, recounted, and certified again, technically he still has a chance. But this is not the way we wanted to wake up this morning. We did not want to see Biden now ahead. And there was definitely funny business going on last night. I'm sure most of you have seen a lot of the images. Let's go ahead, Mr. Producer, and put up my screen. This is what happened this morning, early this morning in Michigan. If you can see that, I can zoom in a little bit. Hold on, let me zoom in a little bit for you. There you go. You can see that early this morning, in the span of, I think it was 40 minutes, Joe Biden went from having 1.9 million votes to 2.13 million votes. The narrative we're being told is that I think it was 138,000 consecutive Biden votes were counted without anyone else getting a vote in Michigan. They're now saying that might have been a typo. It's that's hard. We meant to add one vote, but we instead added 138,000. That's the thing. I mean, you look at this graph too. Look at this graph, and this is where the data doesn't really make sense, because these are hard numbers. What we saw in Wisconsin, that the majority of early vote mail-in ballots that were requested were from Republicans. The same in Michigan. The majority of early ballots requested were from Republicans. This idea that as soon as the early vote comes in, it would just be some crazy Joe Biden tally. It's not based on any of the numbers that we saw going into this election. The idea that as soon as they started counting the mail-in ballots, it was going to be 100% for Biden. I mean, we're supposed to believe that? I mean, you look at that number. I mean, look right here on this graph. Let me move my head down a little bit. That's Michigan. You see Michigan. All of a sudden, Joe Biden, the graph just goes straight up. And then you look here in Wisconsin. Joe Biden's behind. They stop voting. Zoop, Joe Biden just shoots right up. Both states in the early morning, around 6 a.m., it looks like, they had these spikes that were just straight up, that Joe Biden just took in 100,000 plus votes, unchallenged, right? That Joe Biden had 100,000 people vote for him consecutively before Donald Trump had any. I mean, it defies logic. It just does. It really defies logic that you would have so many, because that's what they're saying all night. Oh, well, when the vote comes in, it's going to be all Joe Biden. How does that make sense if the majority of mail-in ballots requested were Democrats? Now, of course, there's independents, fine. Sorry, majority were Republicans. Sure, there's independents, fine. But to see Joe Biden have 100% return on different baskets of ballots, I mean, it's just, come on. Does anyone really think this happened? And I said this on our Facebook page earlier. I'll pull it up. Does anyone really think that Joe Biden, someone who can't even get a dozen people to turn out for his event, does anyone really think that he just got more votes than any presidential candidate in American history? Because that's what they're telling us, right? They're telling us that Joe Biden has more votes than any other candidate in American history. Is that really what we're going to go with? Like right here. Let me put it up. Where is it? Yeah, right here. Sorry, I cannot accept the idea that a presidential candidate who cannot get a dozen people to turn out for a rally miraculously got more votes than any other candidate in history. I just can't. That's on me. I just can't. Oh, I wanted to show this. Isn't it funny that CNN no longer has the COVID-19 graphics up? Notice that? The COVID-19 graphics that had plastered their screen are now gone. And we might never see them again. Because those chyrons constantly on the page was not to let people know. There's never been a disease in history where they've done that. Now, that was just to try and get people against Trump. No, I don't buy it. I do not believe that Joe Biden, someone who 2 days before the election said he's a grandmother, the day of the election, said that his granddaughter was his dead son. I cannot believe that he has more votes than any other presidential candidate in American history. I have a hard time believing it. And when you look at these numbers where you see just gigantic jumps in the early morning hours of just like, yep, we just found a couple 100,000 ballots and oh, lo and behold, they're all Biden. No, I can't buy it. I mean, this is what happens when you have universal, in this case, mail-in voting. They didn't go universal. Nevada went universal. I mean, Nevada, Trump's down by, I think, like 8,000 votes. And the reason they're down 8,000 votes and they haven't called it yet is because the entire state, every registered voter got a ballot, and they legalized ballot harvesting. We're going to see that I am confident to say that you look around the country, both legally and illegally, hundreds of thousands of ballots were harvested. It's just, we had a picture up yesterday. Let me see if I can pull it up. We had a video up yesterday. We played it of a woman literally stuffing ballots. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. This woman right here. She's literally stuffing other people's ballots in that ballot return. See how she has a whole pile of them. Unapologetically stuffing the ballot box. It's illegal. It is illegal in Pennsylvania to ballot harvest. And here she is. Don't want to. Now the election officials are saying, no, it's not true. No, it's not true. But I mean, this is crazy. This idea that they, for the first time ever, they decided to use different pens for the ballots. It's just, really? No one tested that? I mean, if Joe Biden won, he won. That's how it works. But you can't have this just be on this whole, like, you can't have this cloud hanging over it where you have videos of ballot harvesting, you have videos of voter intimidation, you have videos of literal Biden campaign literature being handed out. We showed this yesterday. We'll put it up again. This is Biden campaign literature literally being handed out inside of a polling place in Philadelphia. Right? I mean, how can you have a presidency that is like legitimate when, look, here is a woman in a Biden mask in Philadelphia refusing to let a certified Republican poll watcher into a polling facility. I mean, these are games. And then when she finally gets kind of like told like that's the way it has to be, she says that rule ain't worth being followed. Listen, again, if Joe Biden won, he won. If he won, he won. Donald Trump, if he didn't win, he will have gotten the third most votes out of any president in history. Third only to Joe Biden if he beats him, and Barack Obama in 2008. Donald Trump will have gotten more people to vote for him than the first black president got to vote for him when he was first on the ballot. So I guess if we're going to look at a silver lining in all of this, it's this idea. I mean, they just called Maine for, they didn't call it, but Gideon, Susan Collins' challenger, basically conceded. So let me see if I can find that. So Maine is a little weird. Put this up on the screen. Maine's a little weird. Maine has ranked choice voting. It's the idea that when you go in, you can vote for someone like Lisa Savage, independent. And if she doesn't win, you put down your second choice. And as long as no candidate gets over 50%, it goes to that ranked choice voting. So this is too big of a margin and it's over 50%, so ranked choice wouldn't come into play. But Susan Collins won Maine. Donald Trump lost Maine. So there were Republicans there who voted for Susan Collins but voted against Trump. And we're going to see this in a lot of places. We can actually go, I don't want to spend too much time on the map. We can look at this where John James is still ahead in Michigan. But when you go and look at it for president, Joe Biden's ahead. Right? Joe Biden is ahead by 1% in Michigan, and John James is ahead by a fraction of a percent. Now, John James might not pull it off, right? That might be too small of a it might be too small of a lead. There is still, I don't know what the hell's going on in that county up there. It just shows, though, that the people who voted against Trump probably only voted against Trump and didn't worry about down ballot races. Also, that there are Republicans who voted against Trump before John James. We see that in Georgia, too. We're seeing it across the map. It's these Republicans who, for whatever reason, cannot get behind a Republican president. They would rather lose and maintain their so-called principles than win and have Donald Trump in office. And that's what's so infuriating. That's what I want to talk a little bit about. Mr. Producer, you can take off my screen. That's what I want to talk a little bit about today. And this is why I am so furious, because I'm seeing people saying that it's time for us to come together. I'm seeing it from Republicans. I mean, these races aren't even called. And they're saying it's time for us all to come together. I'll put up a poll on Facebook. Is it time to come together as a country behind Joe Biden? 2 options. Yes, we should come together. No, leftism is evil. Go ahead and take your poll. Is it time to come together behind Joe Biden? I don't think it's time to come together. I can't see how there's nothing. You couldn't pay me enough money to support leftism. And that's what's so crazy about this. It's Republicans who are eager just to get beyond Trump's presidency. Listen, Donald Trump had the House and the Senate for 2 whole years. And Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan refused to put any of his major agenda items through except for tax reform because their corporate donors wanted it. We didn't get congressionally financed border wall, right? We didn't get any of the things we didn't get merit immigration. We didn't get any of the major policy proposals that Donald Trump ran on. The Republicans never bought into it because the Republicans were just as happy with Hillary Clinton winning the election as Donald Trump, whether they control the House or not. They were just as happy with a Hillary Clinton presidency as they would have been if Trump won. And the unfortunate thing is there's many Republicans out there today who are happy that Donald Trump lost. They're happy. They are happy that Donald Trump lost the presidency. And they think that now they can restore decency to the Republican Party. I have friends who are free traders. I mean, not traders with a T, trader, like they believe in free trade. And they actually oppose Donald Trump because he's trying to put American workers first. And they believe that it really should be every man for himself. Americans should have to compete against underpaid Chinese, Asian, African, South American laborers. They actually believe that there should be no protections. I mean, it's craziness. They're like, oh no, I don't support Trump because of that. I know one person who will not support Trump because his position on eminent domain. The idea that if the government is having a public works project, they can force you to sell your home, allegedly at market value. It doesn't usually go that way, but they can force you to sell your home, give you fair compensation for it in order to complete a public works project. I know people who still to this day do not support Donald Trump because he supports eminent domain. That's just, it's bonkers to me. And then you see people like the Lincoln Project, these ex-Republicans who spent the last 2 years trying to remove Donald Trump from office. Actually, these are Republicans. These are people who ran Republican campaigns. Let's let me pull it up. Lincoln Project. These are people that used to run Republican campaigns. These are people who used to be in the Republican Party in Congress. Let's go ahead and put up my screen, Mr. Producer. We look at some of these people. George Conway, that's Kellyanne Conway's husband. We don't really expect him. But Steve Schmidt, let's look at who Steve Schmidt was. Steve Schmidt, he worked for John McCain. He was on the John McCain campaign. He was on the George W. Bush campaign. He was on the Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger campaign. He was the one who pushed McCain to pick Sarah Palin. Right? He was a Republican strategist. He decided that he could not stand Trump, so he helped start this Lincoln Project. They're the ones that have been pushing out the ridiculous ads saying that if Trump wins, he's going to go for a 3rd term and he'll just keep running for re-election. They're crazy. But he used to be an establishment Republican. He says he's left the Republican Party because it's just too crazy. I'm going to take off my screen. I want to put this image up, and at the risk of showing my age, let's put up image 1. This is me in actually freshman of college with John McCain's daughter when she came to our college. John McCain was not my first choice. He wasn't even my second choice. Frankly, I wish I didn't have to vote for John McCain. If I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't vote for John McCain. I can take that off. That's up too long. But, I mean, I was a Huckabee guy. I liked Huckabee. I was all on the Huckabee train, right? I wanted nothing to do with John McCain. But when it came time to rally behind the Republican nominee, had to do it. Barack Obama terrified me then, terrified me for the next 8 years, still terrifies me a little bit now. Had to do it. Had to rally behind the Republican nominee, even if you don't agree with everything they stand for. Right? You had to do it. Because the idea of a Marxist getting in office was too terrifying to let happen. And sure, I was voting in a state where it didn't ultimately matter. But I couldn't bring myself not to cast that ballot. Couldn't do it. Let's go ahead and put up image 2. This is me in graduate school just 8 years ago. This is me at what's his name? Mitt Romney, the Mormon, as Joe Biden refers to him, that Mormon guy. This is me at Mitt Romney's one of his last campaigns of the whole election in Pennsylvania. Sitting there with a bunch of people, didn't like Mitt Romney, can't stand him. I take it off, too long. Can't stand Mitt Romney. Right? He was not my first choice. I liked Ron Paul. I liked Ron Paul because at that point, I was kind of on the, let's just burn the whole thing down. Let's audit the Fed, right? Let's do some crazy stuff. I liked Ron Paul. And I liked a bunch of other people before I ultimately had to settle for Mitt Romney. Because you had to. You had to. We couldn't survive another 4 years of Barack Obama. We almost didn't. Right? It was right after that we had the Sandy Hook shooting. He started coming for guns, right? We dodged a big bullet in the second term of the Obama administration. But listen, I didn't like Romney. He wasn't even on my top 3. But when it came time, I had to get behind him and I had to vote for him. The problem I have is when you look at this map around the country, it is obvious that Joe Biden won these areas not because Republicans didn't turn out, because Republicans turned out and they voted for him. Donald Trump made historic gains among Black and Hispanic voters. Donald Trump doubled his support among African-American women. Now, that might not seem like a big deal. He jumped from 4 to 8%. Not a huge deal. But he had huge gains with African-American men, huge gains with Hispanics. Right? He won Florida. It wasn't even close. Right? He won. I was listening to Tucker last night. He won a county in Texas that the average income is like $7,000 a year. It's like almost all Hispanic. It's a very Hispanic, very impoverished county. Donald Trump won it. And Hillary Clinton had won it last time, I think by 10, 20 points. Donald Trump flipped it. Right? So he made historic gains with Hispanic voters. But these suburban white women, suburban voters, they bought into the propaganda and they voted for Joe Biden. It's how do we as a party? Listen, maybe you are not a Republican, maybe you are. Maybe you identify as conservative. Either way, how do we as a party move on from this when all of the NeverTrumpers who spent the last 5 years trying to deliberately lose an election are going to come crawling back trying to get back in? Remember, Michael Steele was the head of the RNC during the Obama years. Remember Michael Steele? He is now part of that Lincoln Project. He joined up with the NeverTrumpers. You go down the list. We've seen them all. They're all going to come crawling back and trying to rejoin the Republican Party, retake control of the different power structures within the Republican Party. Because listen, their gravy train's about to run out. The Lincoln Project's no longer going to be able to get funding from people to put out anti-Trump campaign ads. It's over. If Trump loses and these states don't turn around, it's over. These people are going to need to find a new gig, and they're hoping that they've restored decency to the Republican Party. They would rather lose than win with someone they don't like or don't agree with on everything. And that's what pisses me off. That's what makes me absolutely furious. Because whenever the establishment gets their candidate and they trot him out and they're like, okay, everyone, fall in line, vote for him, conservatives do it. Conservatives do it because we understand that you don't have to, if you disagree with someone 20% of the time, that doesn't make them 20% your enemy. That makes them 80% your ally. Famous Ronald Reagan quote. We understand that. And I know a lot of people who don't support Trump on many of the things, but they voted for him anyway. But this idea that these never-Trumpers, that they're going to come crawling back in, that it's time for us to come together as a country. No, I mean, how can we do that? If Joe Biden wins, and again, not a sure thing yet. There's a lot of funny business. We went through some of the funny business of massive voter discrepancies. There's definitely funny business that's going to have to get looked at. But if Joe Biden wins, he will win with a smaller majority, a smaller Democrat majority in the House, because Republicans are guaranteed to at least take back 5 seats. Right? He will go into office with a smaller House majority and without a Democrat-controlled Senate. Unless something really changes, Republicans will retain control of the Senate. Joe Biden, and this is what's terrifying. I want to say that Joe Biden's legislative agenda will become a lame duck the minute he gets into office, but you still have people like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, who are going to be there, eager to vote for this stuff. But he's not going to have a Democrat Senate to ram it through. He's not going to be able to pack the courts unless he has a Democrat Senate. He's not going to be able to ram through full amnesty for anyone who wants any illegal alien that wants it. He's not going to be able to ram through health care for illegal aliens. He's not going to be able to ram through legislative gun control. I mean, this is, if we can keep that, that's the biggest silver lining. That's the biggest silver lining, that he will, it looks right now, he will not have the Senate. Thank God. And listen, I hope that Trump can pull this out, right? If anyone can pull it out, it's Trump. But it's getting late in the ball game. We're in the 9th inning. It's 2 outs, right? It's getting harder to do that. When Donald Trump had when there was a recount in Wisconsin 4 years ago, they turned up a couple hundred votes for Trump, extra votes for Trump, not enough to make up the difference now, right? If Donald Trump comes out ahead and wins Georgia, which they're saying that he might not even win Georgia. I mean, this is the crazy thing. Last night, in the middle of the night, Georgia stopped counting ballots because they said they had a pipe burst. It was in the 40s. It was roughly mid-40s last night in Georgia, temperature-wise. They had a pipe burst. All of a sudden, they come back, and once they stopped voting, all the new votes were overwhelmingly for Biden. Same thing happened in Michigan. Oh, we're stopping voting for the night. Oh, you are. Every vote should be counted, but I guess you're going to go take a nap. They come back, boom, Biden has over 138 new votes added to his tally. As if they just found 100,000 votes and there was not a single Trump supporter among them. And you see it in Wisconsin. You see where I'm seeing some things that says Wisconsin's voter turnout exceeds their total registered voters. I mean, that's insane. I don't know if that's real or if maybe the number of registered voters is kind of is older number. I don't know, but I've been seeing that on social media. I haven't heard anyone even ask that, right? I haven't heard anyone ask whether there's any possible chance that someone voted twice in any of these states, that they voted with their absentee ballot and then they went and voted in person. I haven't seen any mention of that. I mean, does anyone really trust that in the heat of all of this, that those election officials are going to be able to spot someone who had voted before? It's chaos. They're taking the ballot, looking at it, checking to make sure it's good, scanning it in. There's no running to a computer and seeing if they've already voted. But no, we can't. We're told not even to ask the question. If you dare ask the question in text form on Facebook or Twitter, you'll be censored. They're literally censoring people. People are sharing videos of ballot stuffing people shoving a bunch of ballots illegally into a collection box, and Twitter slapping a warning label saying, "Oh, this is disputed." No, it's not. No, it's not. If a guy takes a video, we have it. Do we still have it? Yeah, we do. Where'd it go? We had it. If a guy takes a video of someone shoving ballots into a ballot box, it's not disputed. No one's actually put out a fact check for that. It's in real time. Facebook slapping warning labels on anything that even alleges fraud. They're going at this from the perspective that fraud never happens, which we know isn't true. You can have the debate whether fraud is rampant or whether it is rare, but the argument that fraud never happens is just not true. But if you post anything, even substantiated, on Twitter or Facebook saying that you just caught evidence of voter fraud, they slap a censorship label on it. And this is the crazy part. People were using Twitter to tweet these videos to the local election officials, right? To tweeting it out to the people in charge of responding, the local police. And by censoring it, Twitter is making it harder for that to reach the person they're trying to add to the tweet, to tag in the tweet. I mean, this is, yeah, Peggy just said, they literally stole this election. They did it. Let's, obviously there's funny business. We know there's funny business. No one's denying that there's funny business, right? And I think it's hilarious. Donald Trump comes out last night and says, we won at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Democrats say, oh, how dare you, how dare you. This morning, the Biden campaign came out, did a press availability, and their press secretary said, we won. Nothing had changed on the map. No other states had been called. So Donald Trump gets criticized for saying we won before states had been called. And Joe Biden does the same thing. Oh, no, it's no big deal. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. But let's just say for a second that the votes are legitimate. Let's say that every single mail-in ballot that was cast was legitimate. There was no illegal harvesting, right? It was all by the book, legal. Think about that for a second. And listen, I'm all for making it easy for people to vote. I think people should vote, right? I don't believe in making it so easy for people to vote that you don't even have to put your pants on to do it. That you can literally walk your ballot to your mailbox in your underwear, flip up the little flag on the mailbox, and then walk back inside. Can we just agree you should have to put on pants? You should have to put on shoes? I mean, in Texas, they had drive-in voting. They had drive-in voting in Texas. So you didn't even have to get out of your car. And we talked a little bit about last night and on the previous podcast. Texas law, I believe it's Title 4, Chapter 43, I forget which section, that says a polling place has to be a building. It's what the law says. Polling places have to be inside of a building. So you cannot vote at a polling place if you never go inside the building. But when those votes were challenged, thank goodness Republicans still won Texas, but when those votes were challenged, they said, oh no, we can't just throw out that. If the law says that if you're going to vote in a polling place, it has to be in a building, and people do it outside the building, they haven't followed the law. It's just, there's been this whole push just to throw out all of the election laws that we have on the books that have worked for the longest time and to make it just super duper easy to vote. And say, oh no, there's no fraud. Well, how do you know there's no fraud? We're seeing them trying to count these votes, and they're like, well, we've never done this before. You think? You think you haven't done it before? It's a little obvious. When you say you're going to count votes through the night, you say, okay, we're going to stop for a little bit. You restart a couple hours, and all of a sudden, Joe Biden's gained 100,000 votes. Yeah, you think you haven't done this before? I mean, it's insane. And at every single juncture, you have a activist judge willing to overturn state law to put his own or her own formula in place. Look what happened in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I mean, we didn't have to get to this point, but Wisconsin was going to give you extra days to turn your ballot in too. So if Biden didn't win, they'd have 3 days extra for ballots to start arriving. Even though the law says it must be turned into a polling place to election office by the end of the election. By when the polls close, it has to be in by then. A judge has said, no, we're going to give them a few extra days. There is a judge in Wisconsin that said if someone says they have not gotten their ballot yet in the mail, that the state has to email them or fax them a ballot. Emailing ballots. We'll email a ballot, you print it out at home, you bring it in. So now we're just going to literally email ballots to people. This is where you get really nervous about this stuff. And the whole time that we've been like, wait a minute, that's not right. Why would we do that? Oh, you're trying to suppress the vote. What? It's not suppressing the vote. It's saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't just be emailing ballots around. Letting people just print out ballots in their home. Maybe we shouldn't just be mailing ballots to every single household, every single registered voter, without verifying that the voter's alive, still lives there, or is still eligible to vote. I mean, the states with the dirtiest voter rolls sent a ballot to every single registered voter. Like in Nevada. Nevada sent a ballot to every single voter. And when they did it in the primary, hundreds of thousands got sent back. No, it's not a real address, or it's not the right address, the person doesn't live there, or the person is dead, or it's not eligible, right? It cannot be delivered. They didn't clean up their voter rolls in between the primary and now. They still sent out to those dirty rolls. And the result is it all that surprising that Joe Biden's leading in Nevada? I mean, they changed their law in the middle of the night in a special session of the legislature. They changed their law to allow universal mail-in voting in Nevada and to allow legalized ballot harvesting, where Democrats could send people door to door to collect the ballots, so that you didn't have a situation like you have in Pennsylvania, where you have hundreds of thousands of ballots that were sent out but never got sent back in. It's like, nope, we're going to collect them all. I mean, I got a ballot in New Jersey. I said this. I got an absentee ballot in New Jersey, even though I unregistered to vote in 2014 and then tried again to unregister to vote in 2016 when I was talking to my family and they said I was still on the rolls. I unregistered to vote twice and they still sent a ballot to my address in New Jersey. It's just so infuriating. We have videos of them stuffing ballot collection boxes. Big tech says, oh, no, you can't share that. That's election. That's disputed. When you can see it plain as day. She's shoving a whole pile of them into the collection box. And there's no recourse for that because, oh, no, we're going to count the votes. And, oh, yeah, in Pennsylvania, we're not going to look at signatures anymore. So if the signature doesn't match, we're just going to assume it did. Oh, and we're also going to give them 3 extra days for their ballot to get here. And, oh, let's say maybe the post office doesn't do a good roll mark, and we can't really tell when it was mailed. We're just going to assume it was mailed on time, as long as they dated it the right day. I mean, this is what we're talking about, that they literally have changed every single law that they could to make it as easy as possible to vote for Joe Biden, and they had to. No one is enthusiastic about Joe Biden. Everyone who voted for Joe Biden did so against Trump. Anytime Trump tried to make Joe Biden the subject of the campaign, the media refused to let it happen. Think about that. Not once did the media actually allow Joe Biden to become the issue of the campaign. When he was out there, obviously showing he's in mental decline, mainstream and Donald Trump saying, hey, I took a cognitive test, why don't you take it? Mainstream media wouldn't run with it. They're saying, nope, we're not going to do that. We're okay with a cognitively impaired octogenarian getting in. Well, no, I say be septuagenarian. Almost octogenarian. We're okay with this old senile man because we don't want Trump. So we're just going to hide that. Oh, well, look, here Joe Biden is actually collecting money from Hunter Biden. And actually, while sitting vice president, here's an email from a Burisma, a Ukrainian business official, thanking Hunter Biden for setting up that meeting between the Burisma official and Joe Biden while he's sitting vice president. After Joe Biden has already said he never discussed business with his son. Media said, nope, that's Russian disinformation. What? And then when Bobulinski comes out and says, no, that was real, media silence. I mean, they never let Joe Biden become the issue of the campaign. They helped Joe Biden make Donald Trump the issue of the campaign. And for Trump's fault, Trump took it on. Trump took it on and said, you know what? I'll take that. I'll be the issue of the campaign. I'll let you make me the issue. We'll let this be a referendum on me, and I bet you at the end of the day I'll come out ahead. And listen, it's people saying in the comment section that they called Wisconsin for Biden. That doesn't surprise me. I know that Trump wants to do a recount. Listen, Donald Trump, as I said at the start, he received the third most amount of votes out of any president in American history. Third only to Joe Biden, if he beats him, or he still will beat him in the popular vote. Third only to Joe Biden and Barack Obama in 2008. So you can't say literally half the country, when all is said and done, it'll probably be 70 million people, or just shy of 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. And then the left's going to say that they have a referendum. Let's look at that news on Wisconsin real quick. Let me go to the map. Make sure I'm signed in. Yep, let me log into the map. Sorry, guys. I want to check out what people are saying that Wisconsin went to Biden. So let's go ahead and put up my screen, Mr. Producer. So Decision Desk hasn't called it yet, but they're showing him ahead by 21,000 votes. They're showing Joe Biden up in Michigan by 41,000 votes. Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is still up by about 350,000 votes. It's a lot of votes. You look at Wisconsin. You look at that difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. You look at Joe Jorgensen. You look at that libertarian vote. Donald Trump, the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is smaller than the amount of people who voted libertarian. Now, I get it. Not every libertarian is a Republican. That's fine. But if you understand you live in a system where it's a two-party system, and you have a choice between A and B, and people are just expected to vote for the choice that gives them the best shot at the policies they want, you would think that a libertarian would vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. But in this case, libertarians voted for Donald Trump in Wisconsin. And there were enough, and again, never guaranteed, but if every libertarian had voted for Trump, he would have won Wisconsin, period. I'm going to look and see what it was like in 2016 in Wisconsin. I'm interested to see whether in 2016 we had a similar phenomenon with the Johnson. Yeah, no, in 2016 it was even worse. In 2016, you can see that we actually had 3.6% Johnson, the libertarian candidate, got 3.6% of that vote. And that's why Democrats were all furious about Jill Stein, because see that 31,000, they're furious because that was more than the difference between Trump and Clinton. But you had all those libertarians. So it looks like the libertarians ultimately, most of them, looks like they did come home to Trump in Wisconsin. But those 38,000 who just had to vote on principle, they just helped give us, if it stands now, they just helped give us President Joe Biden. God help us. Go ahead and take that off the screen. It's let's look at the poll. Let's see if anyone else. I'm curious to see if anyone actually believes it's time to come together. Oh wow, 9 of you said it's time to come together. Let's put the results in the video. 3%, 9 people say it's time to come together. 258 people, 97%, say no, leftism is evil. Interesting. Now, I have no desire to come together. I have no desire to be kumbaya. I have no desire to be friends with anyone who decided to put Joe Biden in as the leader of the free world, in charge of our nuclear codes, when he sees his granddaughter. Like, this happened yesterday, or 2 days ago. Joe Biden saw his granddaughter and called her his dead son. He looked right at his granddaughter and said, "This is Beau Biden." That's the man who's now going to have the nuclear launch codes? Is this a joke? Why? Because Trump tweets? Oh, you don't like his tweets? Oh, he's mean. Oh, okay. Oh, he's mean to this person. Oh, okay. So we're gonna have a guy who literally is losing his mind in charge of the most powerful nation on earth. Okay, that's interesting. The silver lining is that Texas didn't go blue. They literally did everything they could to get Texas to go blue, and it didn't. We look at those votes. We can go ahead and put up my screen again, Mr. Producer. Now it's loading. Where you at? There we go. They did everything possible that they could to make Texas go blue, and they still came about 640. No, I'm off with that. They came up about 660,000 votes short. So I'm happy about that, right? I'm happy that let's look at the House races. You start looking at these House races. Crenshaw won, that's good, right? Louis Gohmert won, that's happy. We have Republican. Republican. Al Green, he's a clown, but he won. Are there any flips? Any flips in Texas? This one's still too close to call. Pete Sessions won. So a lot of Republicans winning House races in Texas, which is what you want to say, right? They were saying that Trump was going to affect down ballot races and that there was going to be a hemorrhage of Republican support. Good that Chief Justice, that's good. Maybe they can do a good ruling on drive-through voting next time. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be, if you're looking for someone today who's like, there's still a chance, I'm not going to be the guy I'm not going to be Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with my little whiteboard showing the path. It's possible. Anything's possible. Until it's certified, anything's possible. But right now, Joe Biden looks to be our next president of the United States. If all of this, even if Trump wins in Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, unless one of those other states flip, Joe Biden is our next president. So the question is, what do we do with that? Do we give up? I mean, are we? That's what people are telling us to do. Let me find the. I think it was the Gap. The Gap tweeted out. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so this is what the Gap tweeted out. Let me pull this up. The Gap tweeted out. Oh, where is it? Come on. Too many ads. Too many pop-ups. This is what the Gap closing company tweeted out. The one thing we know is that together we can move forward. Oh, a little Gap sweatshirt, red and blue. No. If you are pro-life, there is no negotiating on whether or not babies should be allowed to be killed in the third trimester. Like, taking aside like other issues, third trimester abortion is abhorrent, right? You cannot be pro-life and come together with people who are pro-infanticide. You cannot be pro-gun and come together with someone who believes that no one should be allowed to own a semi-automatic firearm. I mean, this is insane. No one should be allowed to own a semi-automatic firearm. That's what they say. I want to make sure I get this right. That the Browning Auto 5, I believe the Browning Auto 5 was the first semi-automatic shotgun that was patented. I think there was a couple earlier ones that were the designs. But basically, they're trying to make us go back to early 1900. Before that, they're trying to make us go back to the 1800s in the technology that we're allowed to use to defend ourselves. Like, how can you be pro-gun and work with someone who believes you should have to use 1800s technology for self-defense? That anything invented in the 1900s or the early 2000s is too dangerous for the average American civilian to own. How do you negotiate with that? Right? How do you negotiate with court packing? People who want a court pack. How do you negotiate with people who say every illegal alien should have free government-funded health care? I mean, there's no meeting in the middle. It's not, oh, Joe Biden won a couple of states by 10, 20, 30,000 votes. That means we just all have to get behind giving all the illegal aliens health care. No. Like, what? And the Republicans are happy about this because they don't have to keep pretending to be Republicans. They don't have to keep pretending to be conservatives. They can be the opposition party. They much more enjoy being the opposition party than they enjoy actually governing. In 2 years, when Trump had the House and the Senate, they didn't do anything but tax reform. No other major legislation. They are much happier as the opposition party than they are as actually having to govern. Because then they can just talk. Talk is cheap. Oh yeah, we'll do this. We'll do this. I mean, I'm still waiting for that John Boehner promise. John Boehner made the promise that if the Supreme Court did not strike down Barack Obama's amnesty, that Congress would do it. That was a John Boehner promise. Nope. Paul Ryan took over, and that was not a Paul Ryan promise. Even though Mitch McConnell made it, he changed his mind. No, you can't just all of a sudden just bend over backwards. Like, oh yeah, we're going to now support a Democrat Supreme Court justice if Joe Biden gets one? No, the Democrats changed the rules, folks. It's crazy. It's crazy, the cowardice in the modern Republican Party, how they are just so content with losing. They would rather lose and be able to lose with principle in their mind than win and be able to do something. They'd rather lose and say that we were principled conservatives and we never strayed from the conservative message than have to do something that goes against their delicate sensibilities. People saying, what were your questions, results? Is it time to come together as a country behind Joe Biden? 3% said yes, 97% said no, leftism is evil. And I've just reopened the poll, so if you want to keep taking the poll, you can. It's, this is, there's no way. I mean, this always happens. When Barack Obama won, it was, oh, yeah, we all have to come together. First black president. No. If your first impulse after losing an election, which again, it's not sure that it's gonna happen, but it's looking that way. If the first impulse after losing an election is that you're gonna throw aside all of the principles you were fighting for and support the exact opposite, then you're not a conservative, right? No one can say they're a conservative if one day after election day they're rallying behind Joe Biden, right? And this is the thing. These Republicans, rhinos, the Lincoln Project, they're going to try and weasel their way back in the Republican Party. People like Michael Steele are going to try and weasel their way back and control the Republican Party. They're going to say Trumpism was the problem. Trumpism was the problem. Donald Trump did what Mitt Romney, what John McCain couldn't do. He built a coalition to win the presidency. It looks like he's going to come a couple votes shy in the states that he needs to get over the top. The Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona. Looks like he's going to come a couple of votes shy. But if any other Republican would have gotten blown out of the water, right? Any other Republican put up against Joe Biden, I think would have gotten blown out of the water. Because any other Republican would have also been blamed for COVID. No matter what a Republican president did, they would have been blamed for COVID-19. No matter what. They wouldn't have given another Republican a pass. No, remember, they called John McCain a racist, right? They called Mitt Romney a racist. They called Mitt Romney a sexist because he said when he was governor of Massachusetts, he asked for a binder full of female candidates, so he could pick qualified female candidates to hold positions. They said that was sexist. With the exception of white supremacist and Nazi, every other word that's been thrown at Donald Trump was also thrown at every other Republican to try and run for the job. Remember Sean Hannity loves to play it when George W. Bush was running, that they ran the ad saying, oh, my daddy was lynched and George W. Bush supported it. Remember that? With the chains, he was dragged down the street. Every other Republican, they realized that with Trump, they had to go to the extreme of white supremacist, Nazi. They had to go that extreme. And you see last night that Trump supporters got stabbed in D.C. Stabbed. But we're the problem. Carol Cole saying, why are you saying we lost? I'm saying that we lost. Listen, we haven't lost yet. It hasn't been. We can go ahead and put up my screen. It has not been certified as a loss. It hasn't. Anything can happen. But right now, Wisconsin says there are no votes left to count. And Donald Trump is down by 21,000 votes. That's the problem. There's no votes left to count in Wisconsin. You can recount the same votes. You can try and play games and discredit some of the votes, but there are no new votes to count unless you can find a way to flip 21,000 votes from Joe Biden to Trump or to get rid of Joe Biden votes. Wisconsin is lost, right? It's possible, but right now Wisconsin says there are no votes left to count. Michigan, Donald Trump is now down by 41,000 votes. Again, same story. Look at the Libertarian candidate, Joe Jorgensen, 58,000 votes. If this holds and Donald Trump loses Michigan, then he will have lost by a margin smaller than the number of votes that the Libertarian candidate got. Even if Donald Trump holds Pennsylvania, which is it's still possible, he can still hold Pennsylvania. Sure, he wins North Carolina, wins Georgia. There's Arizona. I mean, Arizona, he's making up a little ground in Arizona, but there aren't a whole lot of votes left to count. Nevada is our only real option here. And they're going to do whatever. They're still counting ballots, right? They're going to let ballots come in through the rest of the week, and they're going to keep counting them. So that's what I mean. It's not over yet. It's not over yet, but it's not looking good. Zach says, "What do you mean play games?" It's the same deal with Democrats. You look at ballots and you try and find a reason to discount it, to discredit it. I mean, we can use whatever word we want with that, but if someone votes and they forget to cross their T and dot their I's, yeah, you could throw it out. But I mean, if I was that person, I'd be pissed. Now, if they don't use the secrecy sleeve, fine. I'm just saying, playing games, getting people with magnifying glasses looking for the hanging chads. I mean, no one wants to get to that level. So he's going to contest it. Absolutely, he's going to contest it. And I do not anticipate Donald Trump going down without a fight. But right now, Wisconsin says there are no more votes left to count. No more votes left to count. Nevada says that even though that they still haven't counted all the votes, and they still expect more votes to come in. Right? Pennsylvania still says that they have close to 1 million Philadelphia votes left to count. If it's any indication, right? If it's anything like what we saw in Wisconsin and Michigan, where once they start counting those votes, forget about the idea of Donald Trump getting any of them. Oh, surprise, surprise, they're all happen to be Democrats. Listen, it's obvious that there was funny business. It's obvious that there was funny business. It's obvious that there was cheating going on. The question is, can you catch the cheating? Can you identify that the cheating has affected certain votes, right? Because it's just saying that they cheated doesn't change the fact that the votes are counted, right? If you say that someone dumped 1,000 ballots in, you have to figure out who those ballots were, how those ballots were cast, right? Catching a ballot harvester doesn't change the fact that the votes are in. It's tough. It's real tough, and no one can possibly say that that's legitimate. Yeah, Kathy, you're right. Donald Trump fought for us. Least we can do is fight in prayer for him. Absolutely. Absolutely. I want nothing more than for what we're seeing here to get reversed. Nothing more than that. The problem is that short of a judicial miracle, I mean, that alone should be cause for a serious investigation. But now they're saying that was a typo. And they're saying that had no effect. That's what they're claiming. So we'll continue to look. We'll continue to look at these things. The Sharpie situation in Arizona, infuriating. Right? The idea that there were polling places in Pennsylvania in pro-Trump areas that opened an hour late and people left because they had to go to work, infuriating. Right? The idea that there were people going in to vote and the machines were broken, so the polling workers, election workers said, hand us our ballots, we'll scan them later. Infuriating. Right? The ballot harvesting, all infuriating. Democrats didn't do anything. Democrats didn't do anything that they didn't already promise to do. Remember, Joe Biden said that the Democrats have created the most robust. Let me get. I don't want to get fact checked. Joe Biden said that Democrats have put together what he thinks is the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. That was straight out of the horse's mouth. Right? They're saying, "Oh, well, he meant something else." No, it's a Freudian slip. Isn't that amazing? There's no such thing as a Freudian slip in the age of the fact check, because that claim was fact checked by the fact checkers, and they said, "Oh, well, no, what Joe Biden meant to say was this." Well, he didn't say that. He said they've created the biggest voter fraud organization. And I don't care what you think he meant to say, that's what he said. But no, there's no such thing as a Freudian slip in the age of fact check politics. Now, it's infuriating because the Democrats did exactly what they said they were going to do. They said they were going to make it so easy to vote for Joe Biden, you don't have to be enthusiastic about it. You vote from the comfort of your living room. Hell, in Wisconsin, if the ballot didn't arrive, you can get it by email. Democrats did exactly what they said they were going to do. And Donald Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to turn out the vote at levels you'd never seen before. And he did. Donald Trump, no matter what the outcome is tonight, Donald Trump will have gotten the third most votes in American history as a presidential candidate. He will have gotten the most votes out of any Republican presidential candidate. Donald Trump did everything he said he was going to do. It's just where it mattered in specific districts. That's where it gets sad. And what the polling says is Donald Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do. He was going to get more Hispanics on his team. He was going to grow the tent by bringing more African Americans into the party. He did it all. But it was the white suburban household turned against Trump. 4 years of calling Trump a racist, a sexist, misogynist. I guess it worked. And then blaming him for a respiratory virus, of which, according to the latest CDC estimates, almost everyone who gets it under the age of 70 will survive. Blaming Trump for that and making it seem like it's the Black Death. It worked. Democrats did everything they said they were going to do. And listen, it's possible. We can. It's possible to get a recount. It's possible to actually change some of these votes, but we've never had recounts swinging 10, 20, 30,000 votes. We've never had it, right? We've never had a recount swing 21,000 votes. We've never had a recount swing 41,000 votes. We've never had a recount swing almost 100,000 votes. 8,000 votes, that's a little, that's doable, right? And here's the other thing. Without that Chinese coronavirus, Donald Trump wins in a landslide. You realize that, right? Donald Trump, without the coronavirus, wins re-election in a landslide. And listen, the history will remember him as the president that lost re-election. He'll be, if these results stand, which again, anything can happen, but if these results that we see stand, Donald Trump will be in an exclusive class of presidents who did not win re-election. Very, very rare in American history, especially in American modern history. And history will remember that way. And the history books, they'll probably try and write the history books as that he was a mass murderer, which is what the Democrats actually called him. I mean, that's why we can't come together. They literally ran a campaign on this accusation that Donald Trump is a mass murderer. There are leftists online still hoping for Donald Trump to be imprisoned for the rest of his natural life. They actually believe that he should be prosecuted for mass murder. I forgot the guy. There was one guy, one talking head that actually said that like Hitler was better than Trump. These are insane people, right? You can't come together with those people. You see Ben Shapiro last night. And that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of that now if Trump loses, which again, I know I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but if these results stand and if some things don't start flipping, if Trump loses, you're going to see a lot of those principled conservatives who came across to the Trump side just to save their own careers. People like Glenn Beck, people like Ben Shapiro, right? Who came to the Trump side because otherwise they don't have a job. Like, remember, Glenn Beck had a bowl full of Cheeto dust and he shoved his face in it when he thought that Donald Trump could never win. He'd have no job, no company, if it wasn't for his flip back to Trumpism, back to supporting Trump. They're all going to come running back. You're going to hear the I told you so's. When the reality is that Donald Trump is the only Republican who has ever been able to amass this coalition. No other Republican would have been able to win in 2016. No other Republican would have been able to turn out this many votes. And maybe he doesn't lose. Maybe we end up winning. We know that there's fraud. We know that there's abuse. We know it's all there. It's just, it's incredibly demoralizing because you see what Democrats did. You knew it was coming. You saw that they did it anyway. They were literally people were posting on social media that they're blocking poll watchers from getting into precincts. And those are the same precincts now that we're being told went like 99% to Biden, right? Oh, no, just a coincidence that we didn't let any of the Republican poll watchers in. We knew exactly what they were going to do. They told us what they were going to do. And they did it anyway. Unbelievable. Well, I don't want to be the negative Nancy. Oh, Zach's saying other Shapiro. I'm still mad at Ben Shapiro. So I don't know what Shapiro did in North Carolina. I don't want to be the negative Nancy. It's still possible he wins. And we're going to continue to fight like hell to uncover voter fraud, make sure that people who are responsible for that fraud are punished, and to try and make sure that the votes that were cast through that fraud are invalidated, right? We want to look at the Pennsylvania ballots especially and see what ballots were spoiled, what ballots signatures didn't match, right? Like what ballots came in after Election Day. I mean, there was some things last night where like you look at different laws and they say that in Wisconsin that ballots have to be at the location where they'll be counted by the end of the night. And they didn't count them at the locations. They then brought them after the polls had closed to a central location to count. That's where you start questioning, like, well, technically, do those votes count? That's where it gets to be a really hard to predict court battle. Because as we talked about on the show yesterday and the day before, when Texas law, again, Title 4, Chapter 43, when Texas law says that if you want to vote in a polling place, it has to be in a building. And then that is brought to the judge and say, listen, it says you have to vote in a building. These people didn't vote in a building. Obviously, they did not vote in person, so those votes shouldn't count. The judges say, nope, we don't want to be the ones who invalidate 100,000 votes, so we're going to let it stand. We're seeing that across the country. It doesn't matter what the law says. They're going to do what's right. And that's why it's so infuriating, because without this mail-in ballot, which we know there is fraud, we know that there is illegal ballot harvesting. Without that, Joe Biden doesn't win at all. He couldn't even get 10 people to come to a rally. People would not have shown up to vote for him. He got votes because they could do it without having to lift a finger, right? They could do it without going outside. Yeah, no. We've said it on the show before now that the country going into this election was more politically divided, more polarized than at any point since the Civil War. And we see that in the election results. We see that with right now it's showing Joe Biden at 70.9 million votes, Donald Trump at 68.2 million votes. Trump will get some more as more votes trickle in. But the worst thing for this country is a close election, because no one wants a civil war. We talked about this on the show a lot. No one wants a civil war. Maybe we'll talk about that more tomorrow when Joe's back on. No one wants a civil war. But you don't avoid that by saying that it's not going to happen, right? You have to actually fix the underlying problems that are driving this nation apart, driving a wedge in between us. And it's not Trump supporters. Like, they didn't have to board up all of the shops in all of the major cities for fear of Donald Trump supporters rioting. Like, when I get off from this, I'm going to do a little work, and I'm going to take a nap because I was up all night. Like, I'm not going out to riot. I'm too sleepy to riot. Got too much work to riot. No, they boarded it up because if Donald Trump won, the left was going to tear this country apart. That hatred is still there. And yes, the hatred of conservatives towards Marxism, towards leftism, is still there. We are no more united today, regardless of what Joe Biden says. You know that Joe Biden is going to come out and say, it's our job to heal the nation. Joe, you want to give pregnant women the right to terminate a baby on its due date. You're not going to heal the nation, Joe. You're not going to heal the nation. They're going to try and make that, but it's not going to get healed. And they're going to try and ram stuff down our throat. Pray to God the Senate stays in Republican hands. And we'll just keep inching towards that civil war. And if Joe Biden bows out, like, this is the terrifying thing. Joe Biden sworn in 5 minutes later, he resigns. Kamala Harris is president. Then I think then you'd see conservatives starting to get a little froggy, as my neighbor likes to say. No, we're no closer to being united. We haven't gotten any farther away from a civil war, and it's not something that most conservatives want. I'm sure there's some people that are itching for a fight, but we're no farther away from a civil war. We're probably closer today, because the other side, the side that truly believes Trump supporters should be put in internment camps and re-educated, or that we should be arrested for supporting a mass murderer, right? These are the crazy things you see on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. They now think that they have a mandate. That because Joe Biden looks like he's going to win Michigan, Wisconsin by tens of thousands of votes, they have a mandate. Trish says we're doomed if Biden wins. We're not doomed if Biden wins. America is more. America's stronger than any one president. I mean, the Democrats have been saying that about Trump. Joe Biden cannot destroy us. We have checks and balances, one of which is the Second Amendment, if we want to call a spade a spade. He will not. We're not doomed, right? As long as free men are willing to do what is necessary to protect their freedom, then the sun will never set on the United States of America. So we're not doomed, but it's gonna get bad, and hopefully the Senate stays Republican. Hopefully Susan Collins stays a Republican. So I'm sorry we had to have this episode. I don't want to demoralize anyone. I would love to be the guy that says, "Oh, there's still a chance." I'd love to be the guy that shows you like this is how it's going to go. But we've strived on the show not to be that voice. I'm sure there's people out there you can get that voice, and listen, they might be right? We're not that voice. Like, you're not going to get me. Anyone who's always sunny in Philadelphia, Mr. Producer, put up my screen. I feel like this is what most of the conservative internet's doing today. We're trying to chart the path to victory. It's possible. Definitely can happen. But yeah, I'm not going to be that guy. And maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe it changes. Maybe some votes start flipping. Maybe some short challenges start getting ruled on. It's just, there's no way around this. That map, it's not a good map to look at. If Donald Trump had won Arizona, then we'd be in much better shape, because then Arizona and Pennsylvania could take the whole thing. But that map is just, absent a flip, it's just too hard. But we'll keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting to make sure that every legal vote is counted, every illegal vote is thrown out, that everyone who is responsible for fraud, we're going to keep calling it out, and we're going to keep fighting like hell. We're not going to come together. There is no coming together on this. Poll result unchanged. 357 say no, leftism is evil. 3%, 11 people say that it's time to come together. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. I'm hoping that we can find some good news, more silver linings to find out of this, but it's a tough morning, right? It's tough to go to bed with Trump ahead and come downstairs in the morning to find that they added a couple hundred votes to Joe Biden in the middle of the night. It's tough, but we'll keep looking, we'll keep reporting it, and we'll keep fighting. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Remember that we really do need you to subscribe to the audio version of the podcast. You can do that. Links in our description on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean. Make sure you check us out on Facebook and YouTube. We go live Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, so check us out there. Make sure you like and follow our page. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and then hit the bell for notifications on YouTube as well. There's also a link for you to join our Conservative Daily newsletter. Also, you can text FREEDOM to 89517. You'll receive text alerts when our podcast goes live. Also, we're on Parler at Conservative Daily, all one word. We'd be happy to follow you back. I know that this is it's not the way we wanted today to go, but this fight is not over. This is a generational fight. Conservatism, America, is more important than any one election, and we're in this for the long haul. So again, my name is Max McGuire. Joe Otto wasn't in today. He'll be in hopefully tomorrow. Everyone remember that the fight to take back our country, as we see, isn't over. Not even close. But the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together.